Every day there are new discoveries being made all around the world, but whether they'll change the course of history is open to debate. Some findings are making researchers question what we've believed to be the truth, which could ultimately mean a change in all our history books. So let's have a look at some of them. 18 unsettling discoveries that might change history. 18. Side by side. In 2012, paleontologist Otis E. Klein Jr. found a Triceratops brow horn in Dawson County, Montana. The horn dated to roughly 35,000 years ago, which is in strong contrast to the theory that dinosaurs became extinct 65 million years ago. This could ultimately mean that dinosaurs and humans could have once walked the earth at the same time. 17. They're about to take over. Millions of lives have been saved thanks to antibiotics and vaccines, but things are not looking so good long term. It's been discovered that microbes are evolving at a much faster rate than we're able to fight them. So, what does this unsettling discovery mean for you and me? It means that, for example, the influenza virus mutates so quickly that our vaccinations are ineffective against it. Hospitals are struggling with an antibiotic-resistant Staphylococcus bacterium, meaning a small cut could turn into a life-threatening infection. Even with all our medical advancements, we're battling to keep up with this one. 16. I'll drink to that. Granted, it may not change history significantly, but it may just mean our history books will need to alter their original findings on ancient China's love for beer. Seems like the Chinese were drinking beer made from rice roughly 9,000 years ago. Beer-making equipment was discovered at an excavation site in Shanxi province dating back to between 2400 to 2900 BC. To top it off, the presence of barley was found 1,000 years earlier than the Chinese started eating it. 15. Power up. 3D printing is not a new concept, and it's opened up doors that were previously thought unimaginable. What would you think would be a game changer in terms of 3D printing? Scientists at Harvard have managed to create tiny, rechargeable lithium-ion batteries using a 3D printer. This discovery would only be unsettling to those coining it with the sale of batteries, but just imagine the possibilities. 14. Once upon a time. It's been said that Antarctica was once a tropical paradise and not covered in ice as we know it today. Scientists believe it was like this around 50 million years ago. A team discovered the fossilized remains of thermophilous plants, which included baobabs and ferns, and the remains of an ichthyosaur, which only lived in warm environments. Hard to imagine Antarctica covered in white sandy beaches and palm trees, isn't it? 13. No monkey business. In Ireland, the bones of an ape have been gently laid to rest. It may not sound too unusual, but this was no ordinary ape, but rather the bones of a Barbary ape. These apes were a species of Old World monkey and were native to North Africa and the island of Gibraltar. So how did these apes get there? Common sense will tell you that they didn't get there by themselves. So were they being taken there for trading? And if so, that could prove that trade routes between the Mediterranean and Ireland were in place way earlier than anyone could ever have imagined, meaning the history books need a little tweaking. 12. Write it off. John Ruskamp is convinced that the Americas were reached by the Chinese thousands of years before the Vikings, and that's because he found some strange symbols etched into old stones. These drawings were found in 82 places around the states, and they all follow a similar style with no similarities to the local culture. The writing is called oracle bone, and it's one of the oldest forms of Chinese writing. Should Ruskamp be correct in his theory, it would mean that Chinese settlers reached North America 3,000 years ago. 11. Don't shoot the messenger. But there is speculation that it was the Romans that discovered America. Should this turn out to be true, then history would certainly have to be rewritten. In 1922, a tiny head sculpture was discovered beneath an old building in Mexico. The features matched Roman artifacts from around 2nd century BC perfectly. Amongst the treasures were 3rd century Roman vases, providing strong evidence that it was the Romans that discovered America and not Columbus or the Vikings. 10. If not the Romans, then the Aussies. Perhaps the Roman theory isn't grabbing you. This one might though. Another archaeological discovery in Brazil brought up human skulls that matched people living in Australia and Melanesia. More skulls like these were found in California. Stone tools were also found, which led researchers to believe that these people inhabited the area for almost 50,000 years and that they arrived by boat. Sounds crazy that a boat could make it from Australia to America 50,000 years ago. But cave paintings discovered in Australia show boats built to withstand the roughest oceans. 9. Man's best friend. There have always been intense debates about how long dog has been man's best friend, and it seems that the more research going into finding this out means that more people are leaning towards a much longer time period than previously thought. Evidence has shown that it's been more than 7,000 years that we've been best friends, and archaeologist David Jacques found a dog's tooth near Stonehenge. Not too strange, but the tooth came from a dog who was a companion to a Mesolithic hunter-gatherer. The pair went on a trip from York to Wiltshire, making it the oldest known journey in British history. 8. A giant story. Turns out there could be some truth in it. There was a fable of a group of giant white men who came to America and drove the Indians away. Men way bigger and stronger and more powerful than the white men already inhabiting the area. It's a story that had been told repeatedly by the Comanche tribe. Genealogist David Yates did some digging, literally, and discovered the following: a Greek medallion and 2 coins. Further research led him to hear of the Choctaws, who also had a similar story of giants coming to their land. The evidence is leading some to believe that the Greeks made it to the Americas too and fought with the local tribes. But what happened to them is still being investigated, and when we know, we'll let you know. 7. Who built it first? The Egyptian pyramids have left us with far more questions than concrete answers, and now we're going to add more quandary to these immense structures, except not to the ones located in Egypt. Semir Osmanagić, an amateur archaeologist, made quite the discovery in Bosnia. He claims that people built pyramids in Bosnia and that Visočica hill is the perfect example. Leading scholars have called the theory pseudoarchaeological, and that the perfect peak is nothing more than a natural formation. Let's hope that with time he has more evidence to prove otherwise. 6. Giants roam freely. In a totally different area, here comes another account of giants. Conquistador Pedro Cieza de Leon documented everything that took place when the Spanish first came to Peru. The book was called The Chronicles of Peru, and it contains accurate descriptions of the people, their requests, and their culture. The book mentions a village built by giants, and how these giants arrived in Peru in boats made from reeds. He said the length from their knees downward was that of a fully grown man, and that they built wells that were far more advanced than the locals had ever seen. 5. But is it real? The story of Atlantis is not new, but now there seems to be evidence that could prove that a thriving city did exist at one point in time. Just off the coast of Gela, Sicily, a diver made a remarkable discovery. He found 39 ingots underneath an ancient shipwreck. The ingots were made of orichalcum, which is a rare fusion of molten rocks. Orichalcum was exceptionally valuable, and Plato mentioned that orichalcum was found in parts of Atlantis in ancient times. Archaeologists today claim that the ingots are from a once prosperous nation, but whether that nation is Atlantis is up to you to decide. 4. Rock and roll. Up in the Andes Mountains are some very unusual rocks known as the Makawauzi ruins. The rocks look like they have been carved by humans because they resemble human heads. One rock looks like a rough copy of the Egyptian Sphinx. Many believe it's just random erosion, but that's not nearly as exciting as some of the other theories floating around. Many like to believe they've been sculpted by an unknown species, and they're investigating it thoroughly. Other, more off-the-wall ideas include aliens and mystical healing powers. But one theory seems to stand out from the rest. There's an idea that the rocks were constructed by a biblical civilization known as the Masma, who headed to Peru and carved these rocks into what they had witnessed in Egypt. 3. Life on Mars. This is truly a question that has been asked several times over, and recent discoveries could mean that scientists could finally come to some sort of agreement on the matter. It's been discovered that there used to be an ocean that covered Mars, and that the surface temperature of Mars used to be a lot higher, meaning that life on Mars was certainly possible millions of years ago. 2. Quick bite to eat. It may not be the most mind-blowing fact that will change history as we know it, but it certainly gives you a different perspective of life way back when. When we think of fast food, we think of it as a new development. But research has proven that takeout fast food establishments have been around for a lot longer than we anticipated. The first fish and chip shops opened in Britain during the 1860s, and yet we go back even further. Thermopoliums were around in the Greco-Roman world, and they served something hot for people on the go. They're believed to be the forerunner of restaurants. You couldn't sit and had to order your food to take away. They were usually frequented by slaves, and shadier characters used to like to hang out there too, and many were shut down for that very reason. One such establishment was discovered in Pompeii, perfectly preserved. Which of these discoveries do you think would have the capacity to change history as we know it? Let us know in the comments below. It's now time for our number 1 unsettling discovery that might change history, and unsettling is the operative word. 1. Mighty Mouse. It's only a matter of time before scientists will have the power to control our minds, and I'm not so sure that bodes well with many. They've currently managed to control the minds of mice, and the chemicals they are using turns the neurons on and off, and the effects can last up to an hour. Fortunately, this research is only to our benefit. What they've managed to achieve with the mice is to control their appetite and their activity levels. They're hoping the research will pave the way to treating human disease, and that will certainly change history as we know it. Thanks for watching. Leave a like for us over here and subscribe for more videos over here.